August 1st, and we're here in Tucson, Arizona with George Burpo, actually George Harvey Burpo, correct?
Right.
H-A-R-V-I-E.
Yes.
George, you were born on June 19th, 1922 in Jenkins, Kentucky.
Yes.
You served during World War II in the Navy, and you attained the rank of Specialist A, First Class. Is that correct? Okay. Well, you know, we want to cover a number of things in our talk today, George, revolving around your World War II service, which I know also revolves around baseball, and then a little later on we're going to talk a little bit about Rotary. But let's get started with the years leading up to your involvement in the military, and that involves baseball. You were the story we're going to tell today actually begins when you were here in Tucson, and you were playing on the Cincinnati Reds farm team, called the Tucson Cowboys.
Yes.
So tell us that story. Tell us the year, and describe what happened while you were here in Tucson playing baseball.
Well, there's a drugstore on the corner of Congress and Stone, and I was in there one day having lunch because I got a 10% off the price of a 75-cent lunch. And while I was there, I saw the attractive young lady down at the other end of the counter, and I asked the fellow who was waiting on me if he knew her, and he said yes. Would you like to meet her? And I said yes. So he went down and said, Nancy, there's a baseball player up here who wants to meet you. She said, which one was it? And so she said yes, so that's how we met. Now this was on August 15th, and there were only 2 weeks left in the season.
And what year was that, George?
1941.
Okay.
So we had 4 dates, and during the 2-week period, and those 4 dates took us to the Fox movie theater for 4 dates in the afternoon. And then when the season was over, I went home, and that was 1941. So the next year I was with the Cincinnati Reds to end up the season. And I went home. I went to, from there I heard there was a story that anyone who was from 17 to 25 years of age, if you were not in the military, you're going to be drafted in the Army. And you had until November the 30th. And my brother happened to be in the Navy on the aircraft carrier, the Hornet. And he said, that's the best place to be in the Navy. So I went down to a place called Whitesburg, Kentucky, and signed up for the military, for the Navy. And that was on November the 13th. And I had 3 days to get down to Oklahoma City, get off the train, and there's someone going to meet me there from the Navy, because there were 2 Navy bases. One was in the North Base and one was the South Base in Norman, Oklahoma, home of the University of Arizona. And
whoops, I'm sorry, that was the University of
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
What did I say?
Oh, Arizona.
Oh, that's close.
That's all right.
Yeah, it was the University of Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So the bus took us up, several of us got off the train, and took us up to Norman. And this was on a Thursday, and took us over to get our hair cut, get a physical, and then take us over to a barracks where we were going to be sleeping. So we spent the night there, and the next day they took us out to a field where the training was going to be going on. So we went out there, and we were there for 2 months, I think it was, 8 weeks. And we said, why are we going through all this here in the farm country? They said, because if you're ever on a board ship and you get a loud horn coming on, that'll tell you that the ship is about to be bombed. You know how to get off the ship and save your life. So that's what that was like.
Tell me the name of that base.
NATTC, Naval Air Technical Training Center. and that was the south base in Norman, and this was a new base, and the other base was Naval Air Base, because that was a new base for flyers. So we had to train them how to, if they're on board ship, how to get off. So,
okay.
and that was it.
And that was it. Okay.
So,
Well, now tell me, what were your feelings as you were going into the Navy? Were you nervous? Were you excited?
I was excited because I knew I was going to be put on the Hornet. That's what my objective was, and I told them that right off the bat, that I wanted to be put on the Hornet because that's where my brother was. And I kept asking 6 months later, when am I going to get on the Hornet? They kept telling me, saying, you're not ready yet. Well, in the meantime, when my training was over, they moved us over to the physical training department, where now we became trainers to the new recruits coming in. And so that went on, and now it's the first week in February, and I was called in. I thought, well, now they're going to tell me I'm going on the Hornet. No, not so. We want you to be the escort for 12 new recruits that are going to be transferred to the San Diego Navy base, and you're just to be the escort. I said, well, tell me something about that. And he said, well, all you have to do just to make sure that they get on the train right and get off right. And there's only going to be 2 stops made. One was in El Paso for 20 minutes, and the next one was going to be in Tucson, Arizona for 20 minutes. I said, yeah, I'll take that. So then I wrote a letter to this young lady that I met in the drugstore 2.5 years before. Told her I was coming to Tucson. If you weren't married or engaged by this time, I'd like to see you to the depot. So I received a letter back. She said, I'll be there. So now I get off the train, and we have 15 minutes together. She told me what she was doing as secretary for the surgeon at Davis Mountain. And I get back on the train going to San Diego. And so about 4 or 5 months later, I wrote her a letter. I said, why don't you and your mother come back to Norman and visit me? So she said, okay. I said, we're coming back and we're going to be there for 3 nights. So that we had all I had to do was get off the base, which I was entitled to, and we had dinner together the first 2 nights, all 3 of us. And the 3rd night, her mother said, you kids go ahead and go have dinner because I have to pack. We're going back to Tucson tomorrow. So Nancy and I went in and had dinner, and I said to the waiter, can you bring me a check? And she said, yeah. So we were just sitting there talking, just in general, nothing interesting or exciting. And so I was waiting for the check, and I told her, I said, Nancy, I have a question for you. She said, what's that? I said, will you marry me? She said, yes. And I thought to myself, what did I do? What did I say? That's the dumbest thing you've ever done. You weren't even thinking that. But now I thought, well, maybe they're going to put me on the Hornet and I can get out of it. But we went back to the hotel and told her mother. She said, well, I'm glad for both of you. So she said, I'll set up a wedding date, which she did.
It didn't take too long to get that wedding.
No. I was sure I could get out of this. But I was into it, but I have to go along with it. We were married in Tucson, September 28th, just 2 months later after I proposed.
Well, and then did Nancy
Nancy stayed there
Mm-hmm.
After we were married, set up housekeeping. I spent half the time at home at night. Otherwise, during the day, I was out at the base all day.
Tell me about some of the training you did and life on the base.
Well, it was just doing exercises, going up over barriers, going around corners, going down into ditches, which are some of the techniques that you had to know. And when you got on board ship, you would look for these places to help you save your life. So that's what that was like. And then after we were 8 months doing that, we did 2 more weeks going out into the country because we had to train people in case they were not on board ship. They were on a base out in the Pacific, and you had to know how to save your life around the base where you're stationed. So.
And did you enjoy the life on the base?
Oh yeah, the thing I liked about I liked San Diego Navy Base, and I was hoping that one day I would get out there. So.
Okay. Well, now, you then, after you did your basic, you then became a trainer on the base.
Yes.
And so you were doing that, but then the chance to take part in baseball came along again. Tell me about that.
Well, we were told there's a publication that came out, which are constantly coming out from the government, that said that every base, every military base in the United States had 3 units on there. One was a baseball team, one was a basketball team, and one was an orchestra. Now the baseball team, you could play your games on the weekend. The basketball, they'd be on the weekend at nights, and the orchestra was going to be playing every other Saturday night on the base for a dance. Now, if anybody on the base had a wife or a girlfriend, they could bring them on the base. If they didn't, there were waves on our base also, and they would come out and they were looking for somebody to dance with. And the fellow who was our orchestra director was a fellow by the name of Ted Beneke, who was the lead saxophone player for the Glenn Miller Orchestra, and he was the head of our orchestra. So we had, but we didn't have a baseball field. We were just told we were supposed to have one. So about the middle of May, we went out. So they publicized we wanted to recruit baseball players for our team. Well, some of the kids, they just didn't have any idea where baseball was. But we found out when we were at this particular time that there were several former major league players who were in our division. So we worked up a little team and played 4 games over at the University of Oklahoma on the weekend. And then we had a baseball field built, and we played games on the weekend from teams in the state of Oklahoma and military teams, and that was it.
Okay. And you were a pitcher, correct?
Yes, left-hand pitcher. And probably one of the more exciting things that happened while I was in the Navy on the baseball team, we went on a field trip playing the state prison team. And I thought, well, this is interesting. We had a 2-game schedule for them. And so we were walking from the bus down to our dressing room. Somebody said, "Hey, George." I didn't listen. "George Burpo." And the guard said, "You want to go?" This guy was in behind the bars. He said, "You want to go over and see your friend over there?" So I went over, and I didn't know who he was. And he said, "The reason I know who you are, because when you played your first year in Muskogee, Oklahoma, I followed you in your career, and I subscribed to the newspaper, whatever town you were playing in." So we went down to first day. We won the first game 14-2. The second day, we were ahead 10-1 in the second inning, and our manager came over to our manager and said, "You guys are good, but we want to see just how good you are." "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's a fellow that he's a pitcher for the Marine base station here, and he pitches just like you guys do, and we'd like to see just how well you could bat against a good pitcher." And he was a black fella, and he big 6'2", 6'3", and But before that game started, their manager says, the umpire did not show for the game today. Will one of your players come out and call balls and strikes? And one of our guys said, well, I will, but not behind the plate. If you'll let me go out behind the pitcher's box, I'll call balls and strikes out there. Well, when he saw how hard this guy was throwing, I guess I'm warming up, he came over to our dugout and he said, look, we can't let this guy show us up. So what they're doing, when the catcher just gives two singles, one finger he puts down for a fastball, and he puts two for a curveball. So he said that's all he burned. So he said when he puts his finger down, I'm going to spread my feet out like this. The batter would know there's going to be a fastball coming. Whenever he threw a curveball, he said, I'll cross my legs. Well, if they'd known what we were doing, they'd have kept us in the prison. But they came over and said, boy, you guys are good. You can hit that guy.
Helps to know what's coming.
Yeah. Oh, well, the funniest thing was, there was a group of the prisoners sitting up in the grandstand, and a fellow came up with a bucket with a ladle in it, which had lemonade in it. And he was walking through the grandstand selling lemonade to the prisoners. So if somebody wanted one, he just took his scoop out and handed it to them. They drank the lemonade and put it back in. He collected them. So we saw this, and he came down to the dugout and wanted to know if we wanted any lemonade. And we've got a bucket here if you want some. Nope, not so.
You told me about another experience you had involving hitting a fairly well-known baseball player with a pitch.
Oh, there's the next year we were allowed to go out of the state. So we went up to Kansas to play a team up there. And this flight school, and they had a baseball team, all major league players when they went in the service. One of them was named Pete Reiser from the Brooklyn Dodgers, and I think he had led the league in hitting and stolen bases and run batted and a little bit of everything, and he was on their team. So I was pitching, it was a night game, and I struck out the first two batters, and I thought to myself, you know, I've never pitched in the big league, but if I can strike these big leaguers out here, I belong there when I get out. Well, Pete Reiser came up, he was the third batter, and I had two strikes on him, and when he called for a fastball, he went up his leg like this, and I hit him in the calf of the leg. Down he went. And he's on the ground for about 4 or 5 minutes, and I had to take him off on a stretcher, and he said, put me down. I'm okay. So after the game was over, some of the fellows from our Navy team went into this restaurant in the hotel to get a bite to eat. And pretty soon here comes Pete and some of his guys. And they came over, we talked about and laughed about what happened in the game. And he said to me, he said, George, would you do me a favor? I thought, you a major leaguer, that's this rookie to do you a favor? And I said, well, if I can. Well, he pulled up his pant leg, and in the calf of his leg is a perfect imprint, stitches and all of a baseball. He said, would you sign this ball for me? So I thought, boy, that's something. So that was something special. And then we went, I don't know if I even mentioned this when I got out of the service, I was with some, we were playing in Brooklyn, the Giant with the Reds, and we were going to have a night game with the Giants. And I went down to the dugout to say hi to Pete Reiser, because someone had come to me in the hotel and said there's a group of Mexican owners who are trying to recruit major league players to come down to Mexico and play. And one of them had come to me in my hotel room and asked me to come down to Mexico. I said, well, I'll let you know. I said, where'd you get my name? He said, Pete Reiser gave it to us. So I went down to see the dugout to see Pete, and they said, Pete Reiser doesn't see anybody because he's been offered great a lot of money, like $150,000, $175,000. He was making 45. And I went down. I went to see him, and he came over, and I said, we're friends with each other. He knows who I am. I'm with the Reds. Pete came down. We talked, and I said, you gave my name to these guys down in Mexico. And he said, are you going down? You going to Mexico? I said, I will if you will. He said, well, I'm not sure yet. But he finally said he wouldn't go. And there was a fellow by the name of Ted Williams, who was the greatest hitter of all times. And they tried to get him to come down. And they offered him $125,000. How about $200,000? No. He said, what would it take for you to come down to Mexico? He said, $500,000. He said, here's a check. You fill in the amount, and if you want 5,000, 100,000, you can get it. We'll give you a house and a car, anything you want. But he was only making $185,000 himself, but he didn't go down. So there are several fellows in the major leagues who did go down.
Okay. That was great money for the time. Huh?
Well, just one brief thing here. When we played the night game with the Giants, the catcher for the Giants was my catcher when I was in the Navy. And he came, he had wanted me to come over to his house afterwards, now I did. And he said that a pitcher for the Giants had been offered $15,000 to come down to Mexico. And he was 35 years of age. And they said, we'll give you $15,000 to come down. Here's 15 $1,000 bills. He said, look at this. I'll never be able to save that much money. And he went down to Mexico.
You were busy training during the week, playing baseball on the weekends.
Yeah.
Tell us now, you were still hoping to get sea duty, weren't you?
Yes, I still wanted to get on the Hornet. And finally, they called me in. The commander of the base did call me in. I thought, this is it. And this was in May. He said, now I can tell you why we can't put you on the Hornet. And I said, why is that? He said, because the Japanese sunk the Hornet 5 months ago. That's why we couldn't put you on the Hornet. So then another thing came out that says, anybody who was on the base for two years or more, that you're going to be transferred out to another base within 6 weeks. Well, Nancy went home, and I got my schedule. I was going to leave and be transferred to the San Diego Navy base on August the 15th. And I was all ready to go. I'm packed. I'm ready.
And what year was this, George?
1945. And we were all waiting to get transferred, and the atomic bomb was dropped. And notice came out and said, all the transfers have been put on hold. Finally, they said all the transfers have been canceled. Stay where you are. So 3 months to the date that I was inducted, I was transferred out of the Navy. All in Norman, Oklahoma. Boy.
Never saw the water.
Yeah. But they say I found out that there were a lot of bases, that more than half the bases for all the military are in the United States. So I didn't feel quite as bad after that. But
Now you had told me that your brother had been on the Hornet. So
yes,
what was his experience?
Well, he got off. One of the training things that we had trained is whenever you heard the horn that you're supposed to just go and jump off, well, there was what we call a cargo net on the side, and all you're supposed to do is just run and jump on this cargo net. And that's what he did. So that's how he was saved. But it was sunk, and he got off okay.
you were fortunate never to have really been in harm's way, except
Right.
maybe a hit ball.
Right, right.
But how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the time you spent in the service?
I was disappointed that I wasn't put on the Hornet, but when I found out that there are so many bases on the United States that nobody ever got off, I felt like I'd done my share of duty.
You were discharged from the service, and then you did
Yes.
play baseball for a little while professionally.
I went to spring training with the Reds. The season opened, and during the season I pitched in 2 games briefly because I had bursitis in my shoulder. And I couldn't really. I was a left-handed pitcher, and I just couldn't pitch anymore. So after I got out of that, I finally had to get a job.
That's a terrible thing.
That's a terrible thing to do.
All right. So you made yourself a career with what company was it?
Oh, there's a company called Moore Business Forms, which is the largest manufacturer of business forms in the world. And it was designed where you're talking to someone about their purchase orders or invoices, what have you. We designed forms for them and did the printing. And so that's what I did for 36 years.
Okay.
And I was, after that, I was transferred up to Phoenix. And from Phoenix, I went to Albuquerque. And from Albuquerque, I promoted back to district manager here in Tucson. So I came back to Tucson. When I was here for a while, a friend of mine in Tucson said, I want you to do something for me. I said, what's that? He said, I have a place I want you to join. So I said, what's that? And he told me about Rotary. So I joined there, and once again I was joined there to Phoenix, to Albuquerque, and back to Tucson, which I may have said before. And in Phoenix, in the Phoenix Rotary Club, there was also a fellow who from my church, he wanted me to join the Rotary Club in Phoenix, which I did. And the second month out, I was there for 3 years. The second month out, I was on this committee, and we had a project of raising money for the Phoenix Zoo, a freezer locker. There was a new zoo in Phoenix. And so the tickets were $5 a piece. So I bought one. And the prizes were 4 radios, and then a television set was the next one. And the home prize was Ford Mustang. And they threw my name out of that from a $5 ticket. And I was supposed to go down the next day and get the Mustang. Well, the paper came out the next morning. There were two accidents on the freeway. Both of them involved the Ford Mustangs, and the Ford Mustangs were just totally destroyed. So I had a choice of taking the Mustang or $19,000. So I took the $19,000 and went out and bought an Oldsmobile Cutlass. And then I went into County Rotary there in 1978.
78, okay.
And then I was elected to the board of directors for 1979 and 80. In 1981, I was made president-elect. And in 1982, I was president from there on. And then I went to Dallas for the convention. And at every meeting, whether it's breakfast or a meeting, they sang music, and I liked singing. So I went into the room where you could buy different Rotary items. So I bought some Rotary music so we could sing in our club. And that wasn't accepted very well, but we sang. But also there was a publication there, a stack of them, about the highlights of the outgoing president of Rotary, Stan McCaffrey. And he said, take one. So I did. was a great magazine. So I went back the next day. I thought, this would be nice to give up one to all of our speakers. So I went back the next day and told the guy, he needs to take all you want. Look at all the boxes over there. So I filled up my briefcase, got back to the hotel, and I only had 42, and I needed 52. So I went back the next day, told the guy the same thing. He said, take all you want. So I got another handful and put them in the briefcase. So I get back now, I have 82. So I had enough to give all of our speakers. Then I got back, and on the first day of Rotary, I said, we're going to sing. And so I gave everybody some music to sing, and we did. And Jack Kittle, who was a member of our club, he was a choir director, and Dick Stein, mother-in-law, had just had retired from Pima College, and she came to play the piano for us. So everything worked out just fine there. The club had a membership of 88, and when I went in, I had an objective of getting 10 new members, and we ended up with 8 new members. So we had 98 at the time, I think it was. And one of the things in going to other Rotary clubs, they always had a large head table, and I wanted a large head table. So I had one for 12 people sitting up there at every meeting. So how'd you get 12 people? Well, somebody's introducing the visitors, the prayer, visitors, guests, and then the next thing, one of the things I wanted to do is to find out more about our past presidents, because in the 4 years I've been to the club, I really didn't know that much about them anyway. So I asked Russ Long, one of our members, if he would talk to these people and take 4 or 5 minutes. He did more than that. He started with his grandfather, who was one of the charter members of our club, and he got all the information about him, and he brought him to the club, and he and his wife and Rusty sitting at the head table telling all about him. Well, he took more than I thought he was going to take, but it turned out to be pretty good, because he took every past president out for lunch and gave them a series of questions that he had in front of him, asking everyone the same question. And it ended up so many stories that were fantastic that we finally ended up making a book out of them. I don't know if you have seen this book or not. If you have, it's about this thick. But it showed a great story. One of them was about a fellow by the name of Les McQuarrie, who had just gotten out of the Army. And he got his education before he went in the Army. And he went to this little country school to get a job. So he did. And the school board members were all the city charter members. And they hired him. And 3 days after they hired him, they found out that he was a Republican, and they were sorry because they were all Democrats. But he was one of the great stories I remember.
A program that we have in the club still today, the STAR program, was
yes.
Something that you began. Tell us what the STAR program is and how that all began.
Well, Nancy and I were in the airport in Dallas on the way back home, and we were going to stop in Albuquerque because my son was there, and this fellow had to get off the plane there. I get off the plane in Albuquerque, and he said, "You have a STAR program in your club?" I said, "No, what is it?" So he told me, and I said, "Well, send me some information on it," which he did. And I met with some of the past presidents of our club. I said, "Here's an idea. What do you think about it?" He said, "Let's go with it." So we put it all back together. We introduced the STAR program in 1982. And this was for the new members of the club. We wanted everybody to get to know who the new members are all year long. And we had a red badge for them that would identify them as a STAR member. And So that's how they got started. And it's still going.
And can you tell me what STAR stands for?
Special Training and Action for Rotary.
All right, still know it. That's great.
I had a telephone call from a friend of mine who is the president of Tempe Rotary Club, who he and his wife were a host family for a young lady from New Zealand. And when she came to the States, her one objective was to see Senator Goldwater from Arizona, just to see him. And he said, I see where he's going to be speaking at your club in 2 or 3 weeks. If I put her on the plane, would you pick her up so she could just come to the meeting and see Senator Goldwater? And I said, yes, which I did. And when we entered, she was sitting at the head table, by the way, all the way down to the end. When it came time to introduce the visitors and guests, I got up and that's this young lady from New Zealand and why she was here. And I said, after the meeting today, she just wants to see Senator Goldwater. And after the meeting today, I'm going to take her back to Phoenix. And I'll take her out to the airport. And that was it. And while we were having lunch, Senator Goldwater nudged me and he said, you know, we're going to be going back to Phoenix on my jet plane. If that young lady would like to go back with us, we'd like to have her on the plane. I said, well, I think she'd like that, but let me go and ask her. So she wrote me a letter and she said, not only did the guy get to ride the plane, but I also got to ride out in his limousine going out to the plane. So that was a nice experience. But he was very nice about it. The 7 presidents got together every month for breakfast, the first Monday of every month, to talk about projects, programs, problems, speakers, what have you. And I had something in the back of my mind. This was in July where we started. And we met for July, August, and September. And at our September meeting, I said, I have an idea I'd like to throw out at you. Okay, what is it? I said, why don't we have a joint meeting with all the Rotary Club members in our district, and sometime next spring, where we have a big name speaker. So we kicked on a bunch of speakers, but I knew who I wanted, and it was Stan McCaffrey, the immediate past president, because I thought he should have been president of the United States, frankly. He's a polished president. And they said, well, we'll never get him, because I understand he's already booked all the way up until the next convention. I said, well, let's try and see. Well, I had already called his secretary. And she said he only has one meeting left, one weekend left, and that's in the last week in March. I said, don't let him schedule anything, because I'm going to write him a letter. So I wrote to him and invited him down. And I had a letter back from him. He said, I thank you for the invitation. And he said, my wife and I, Beth, he said, I'd like to suggest the last week in March. I said, well, that's fine with us. So then we had 6 months to put a program together. And all we were going to do is have him come and speak and get some professional entertainment. That was going to be it. Well, one of our presidents had a friend who was the chef at a cowboy restaurant. So when Stan and Beth got there, we took him out for a steak cookout for all the members of our Rotary Club and so forth. And then some of the wives who were docents at Tucson Saguaro National Park.
Oh, in the Desert Museum, correct?
National Museum. They took him around for he wasn't looking forward to that. Because he said, I've done nothing but go to museums for 2 years. But he said this one for 2 hours, I had the most exciting time of my life. This is the finest museum I've ever been to. So we thought that was nice. And then something else had come up where we could go to induct him, have him induct a Boy Scout encampment. And he said, this is great. He said, you know, when I was president, I sent out a letter asking every president of all the 10,000 Rotary clubs all over the world to see an idea of what they could do for their community to make a community better. And we, in that magazine, there are 20 ideas from all over the world that they had accepted. Thought they were the top 20. And after he did the induction to this ceremony, making this Boy Scout encampment, which was a place where the Boy Scouts from Mexico could come up to the United States and meet with the boys from Arizona, and they would have a camp where they could go to camp together. Because what they were doing now is just visiting each other in their homes. So when Stan McCaffrey spoke, he thanked all the presidents for putting this together. He said, this Boy Scout encampment, he said, of all the 20,000 ideas I had accepted, none of them were any better than this one out here, what program you did for the Boy Scouts. So that worked out nice.
Yeah, very nice. And he was the immediate past president?
He was the immediate past president
of Rotary International.
Of Rotary International. And I had told him when I took him back out to the airport about just giving all these speakers a copy of this. He said, well, that's a nice idea. And I told him I still had about 15 left. And he called me back about 2 weeks later and he said, you know, I called a printer who did those, and he said he didn't have any more. If you have any extra, could you send them to me? So I sent him 15 extra copies, and he called to thank me for them. He said, I want to tell you something about the Rotary Club in Tucson. I looked up at the history of the speakers, top official presidents, past, present, future. None of them had ever been to a program and speak in Tucson at the Rotary clubs. He said, this is one of the best places I've ever been in my life, and I appreciate it. And the company that I was in, working for, more business firms, won a trip to Hawaii for if you wrote all your quotas. And while I was there, I thought, well, I'm going to go to the Rotary Club of Hawaii. They're meeting here today. And who's the speaker but Stan McCaffrey? So things really worked out fine.
You're still a member, an active member of the Catalina Rotary Club. Tell me, George, what is it about Rotary that has kept you a member for so long?
Because I just wanted to meet new people. Because I remember a lot of them who've already gone, passed away, or just some were in there for a short period of time and left for different reasons. They were transferred. But I just got to meet an awful lot of new people. And that's been my prize, and I have kept all of the Rotary handbooks from even back when I was in Phoenix. All the pictures, and we had pictures, articles. I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I still go back and look at the book, your book that we put out.
I wanted to kind of wrap up and come back a little bit to your military service, because you had a very unique experience very recently where you were invited to go on an honor flight back to Washington, D.C. Would you tell me just what the honor flight is and describe your experience?
It's for Second World War guys who in the Second World War, which I was. And somebody told me about this, and I called down to ask about it. And they said, someone told me about the flight, and I called a lady and asked her if I could get on it. She said, I'm sorry to tell you, but, and this was in April, first week in April.
Of this year, of
2011, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so she said, I'm sorry, we're all booked up. She said, we have 200 members on the waiting list. I said, well, forget it. I won't be alive after 200. So she said, well, give me your name. So I gave her my name. And I said, thank you very much. We hung up. And about 15 minutes later, she called me back and she said, I got you on the May 9 honor flight. And I found out that when she found out my name, she had talked to my son once before, and she called him to tell him. He said, well, I'll pay for that transportation. So that's how I got on.
That's terrific. So tell me about, so this was May 9th of 2012. Tell me what happened. What did you do? Where did you go?
Well, I was told to meet out the Frontier Airport at 4 o'clock in the morning. And oh, heaven's sakes. So I have an extra bedroom, and I asked Rosa to come out and spend the night. So she went, spent the night, and got up about 2 o'clock in the morning to get me ready to go out, because there's going to be 48 guys who are going to be getting on this plane, and they're all older men. They're going to be crippled, and so I better get there early so I won't have to stand in line too long. So we drove up there about 3:25, and there was nobody out on the curb except 3 ladies. And they said, oh, come on in, get on out. I did, so I left, went inside the airport. Here were about 200 people inside the airport. And they were in there for all the fellows who were going. And here this gal over here comes in, walking in, because they had written to her to, for some reason or the other, to contact in case of emergency. Well, she had parked the car, now she's coming in. So they had some refreshments for her, coffee and cookies and so forth. And then somebody was coming around taking pictures, and apparently somebody wrote and said, or maybe I said something, I'd played baseball, and this one, somebody said, and I had some pictures I'd taken along, and I guess I gave them out, I must have. And so then he said, okay, everybody in the wheelchairs, time to go out to the plane. So I went over, got to my wheelchair, and we started down this hallway, and here are people on both sides yelling and screaming and clapping and throwing kisses and everything else. And here I packed my camera in my suitcase, and I should have had that to take a picture of all that. So we go out and get on the plane, start taxiing out to their runway, and there was a fire truck sitting out there, and I thought, gee, what if we're going to catch on fire? So we get out there, they turned their hose on, greeting all the veterans. So we went to Dallas, got to Dallas. Fire trucks there were waiting for us when we got there too, and when we took off again, before we went on into Washington. And but we got into the Baltimore Washington Airport. That's where our hotel was. And took us to the hotel. We had dinner that night with all the fellas in their suits, shirts, collars. Kids get to meet each other. And the next morning, we were supposed to get up early, have breakfast at 7 o'clock, because we were going to leave at 8:30 going out to the different museums. And so that's what we did all day. And they had a box lunch for us at noon, no lunch anywhere. And then we go back out and get on. We went to the other memorials, and the one World War II memorials was the biggest one, the most important one. Everybody got to go out there. We were out there for about 2 hours, I guess. Then we get back on the bus and go out to the Korean and the other wars. And but we were told not to. The next day, on the day we were going to leave, we went out to the what the world graveyard?
Arlington?
Arlington National Cemetery, with all the cemeteries out there. And I asked the driver, I'm sitting up next to the first seat out, and the lady who runs the program was sitting over here. And I asked him, I said, who gets to be buried here? He said, oh, the president, vice presidents, and their families, and children, and other dignitaries. And he said, and veterans too. I looked at the lady I was kidding with. I said, look, they've got a busload of veterans right here. Why don't we go on over now and check in? She said, get off the bus. Dumb idea.
Not ready yet.
Not ready yet.
Well, tell me about what was your impression of the World War II memorial?
I'll never forget it. In fact, there was a booklet on the memorial that everybody in the honor flight people had signed it.
So, what? How did that trip make you feel?
Made me feel proud that I felt when I first got out of the Navy, I thought I really hadn't done too much, but I realized when I found out there were a lot of other bases that I had done 3 years of my life, and I should be just as proud of that, because in my mind, I had tried to get to a ship, but it wasn't my decision for that. But I wouldn't trade my 3 years in the Navy for anything. I'm proud of it now.
Great, as you should be. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about or cover today?
No, not really. I just was honored that I was able to take the flight. And when we came back, we were supposed to have gotten in here around 11 o'clock at night, and we didn't get in till 12:30. Boy, there won't be anybody out there waiting for us on the way back. We got out here waving girls and women and men and greeting us coming back in at 12:30 in the morning. So the one fellow who was escorted me around, pushed me around in a wheelchair all the way around on this trip, getting me on the bus, off the bus, moving me wherever we had to go. And I told him when we got back, I said, let me have your telephone number, because I want to take you and your wife out to lunch at the Olive Garden. And I said, and he met Rosa out to the airport. And so finally we met, went down to the Olive Garden. Went down to the Olive Garden and had lunch with him. Spent about an hour and a half with he and his wife, and he was a real treasure.
Oh, that's great.
And I met a lot of your friends. It's interesting that of the 48 people, of the 48 men who were on this trip, 6 of them live within 2 miles of where I live. One of them lives in the other section over here, and I didn't even know who he was. So,
That's great. So it helped you connect with some people you didn't even
yeah,
know.
that's right.
So we were just wrapping up some other thoughts about the honor flight. Was anything else comes to mind?
Yes, we had to change planes in Dallas coming back. We were there for about 3 hours, and they came around, all the honor flight people came around with a plastic bag with your name on it. And it says, do not open this bag until you get on the flight. So we were out for about an hour, and they said, mail call, open up your bag. So we opened it up, and here are letters in there from a lot of the kids from South Point High School to congratulating us and thanks for being in your service. And there was one letter in there from Rosa. I thought, what's she doing in there? Well, they had called her to get her name and address, and she wrote a letter to them. They put that in there.
That must have made you feel terrific.
Well, I'm not going to forget her for it. She's a real treasure, by the way. I hope you have a chance to just take a picture of her, because I want her in part. She's been my life now. She knows more about everything you're in life than anybody on earth. I'll tell you.
Okay. So we covered the Navy, we covered Rotary, we talked about the honor flight. Is there anything else we need to talk about, George?
No, I just think back about when I told you about I met my wife and I had 4 dates with her going to a movie. I met her for 15 minutes in a railroad station and 3 nights for dinner, and I proposed.
And then how long were you married?
56 years.
So-
Never had a fight. Some things she didn't like, but she accepted them because she wasn't aware of them, and things she did that I liked, we kind of worked things out. But we got to the point where we knew each other.
I would hope so after 56 years.
Yeah, it was.
Well, that's great. So it was the right, popping that question was the right decision.
It was the right decision. Now here I thought to myself, why did I do that? That's the dumbest thing you've ever done. But it was the best thing I've ever done.